G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to SuperCoach Edge and another edition of Damo's Team Talk, this time coming out of round 20. And let's just not beat around the bush. Let's have a look at how we went for the round that was, and ended up scoring. It was a massive scoring round, of course, across the board. I ended up scoring, I think, a season high, 2,688, and that was only ranked in the top 11%, believe it or not. And ranking-wise, I actually dropped, again, believe it or not, 25 spots to now sit 8,255th overall. Very interesting round, and I spoke about it in the podcast as well, of the fact that it was going to be a very high scoring round, just as evidenced by the I'm the captain now segment, because the amount of captaincy and VC options that we had on hand was ridiculous. And we saw it first up with Bontempelli with a 169. Now, I was wrestling with putting the VC on Bont first up. Now, I've got to really thank the AFL for this, because they fixtured 2 Friday night games, which made absolutely no sense at all. And I wasn't allowed the luxury of putting the VC on Bont first up. And then, as it would have been, the Sydney Giants game, which would have been the first game on the Saturday, I would have put the VC on Bont and the captaincy on Grundy. Now, I've been very keen on Grundy, backing him in as the captain or the VC since I got him last week. So he has been a revelation and was coming up against a relatively soft matchup in Briggs, and he monstered him in the end. He got 137. He was my VC. I promptly locked that in, even though I knew that Dacos, more than likely against Richmond, would have gone higher. Now, the reason I didn't do it was, first and foremost, as I always say, the 120, 125 mark, that always is a lock and load when it comes to, the vice captain scores. They score that, they reach that mark, I'm locking it in. Now, the reason is, in the past, I have actually bypassed that to go for the better matchup, and it's come back to bite me in the ass. And one that comes to mind in recent times is Lachie Neale. He had like a Sunday game. I can't recall. He might have been playing Essendon maybe, and scored putridly, one of his lowest scores for the season. And it just kind of goes to show, like, even though you have nice matchups coming up for specific players, it doesn't always go to plan. And of course, there are injuries and stuff as well, which we can't obviously predict. So all that in mind, I was like, you know what? I would only make the choice of going for Dacos if I needed a different captain in my head-to-head leagues. And there weren't any other, opponents that I was facing that I was going to lose to. So I was already in a winning position, even if I stuck with Grundy, which is what I did. Otherwise, if I needed to, make up some points, I would have promptly put it on Dacos, but thankfully didn't need to in this case. But as you can see, there's a 40-point difference there between Grundy and Dacos' scores, and is what it is. That would have helped me in the ranks a little bit. Probably would have put me more than likely in a positive ranking sense, but we're kind of turning our attention now to cash leagues and head-to-head leagues and everything else. So even though I am obviously trying to go for best finishing rank overall, I've got to be sensible about things as well, and still try and contend in the cash league. So not going to go all out as yet, and hence the reason why I still have that single trade up my sleeve if need be. Now, it is, of course, we are heading into the SuperCoach League finals, and I was lucky enough to progress through to a multitude of cash leagues. I finished first in 2 cash leagues. I finished 4th in another one with an all-important win this round, getting me into 4th spot. And then the other one, I just finished in 5th. I think that was by percentage it might have been. So just missed out there. But there's actually a whole host of leagues as well where I've faced opponents, coaches, on weeks where their pods, who would normally score poorly, come out and absolutely smash it. And I'm sure those of you out there tuning in, you would have that as well in your leagues, and it's awfully frustrating. In fact, my own personal cash league, I've had that, I reckon, for the past 4 seasons running, where that's happened, where I've been the most scored against team in my cash league. Very frustrating. I don't know, maybe I need to take a year off with my cash league, because there's some really weird juju happening there. But anyway, enough about that. Let's go through in terms of line by line, and of course call out those players that scored well and those that didn't. Now, Jordan Clark, I spoke about it previous weeks. He's kind of been a bit of a up and down, yo-yoing type player. And, he's been scoring quite well. Outside of one putrid game against Sydney, 119, 145, that 50 against Sydney, then a 125, 126. That's how he's looked across the previous 5 weeks. Then on the weekend against West Coast, I was thinking he was going to be, absolutely primed. And it was anything but. It was anything but. I think it was actually his 3rd lowest score for the season. So, bit of a disappointment there, Jordan Clark, but thankfully didn't hinder me in my main cash leagues. Now, Jack Sinclair, spoke about it last week, and thankfully he is back on the horse. It is the old Jack Sinclair that we know and love, and I think it probably came off the back of Nasai Wanganeen-Miller playing a bit more time in the midfield, which is what I sort of forecast last episode. And he butted up with that 132 against Melbourne after scoring a 120 against Geelong, when Wanganeen-Miller spend a little bit more time in the middle. So this could be the time for Jack Sinclair redemption season during the finals, the all-important finals. So we are very, very thankful for that. Harry Sheasel, 99, kind of par for the course. He's yo-yoing around as well, which is awfully frustrating. But, again, high ownership, and it's kind of at the point now where it is what it is. Dane Zorko, however, he's been a bit of a frustrating own. I've spoken about him as kind of his floor and ceiling have come very, very close together, where his high scores are kind of non-existent now. And, what were his floor scores, which was kind of about a ton, and now his ceiling scores. So he scored like 105, 100, 107 across 3 games from around 15 to 18. But his previous 2 games, 98 and 65. So it seems as though his floor has dropped, but also his ceiling as well. So he's a little bit of a worry here. Lost 94.9K overall and is priced at 500.2K. If you don't own him, I would not touch him with a 50-foot pole, really, because he's out of form, and it seems as though he's kind of slowing down a bit, much like Brisbane, but they may still turn it around. But he's just really fallen away as the season's gone on. So I don't think I have any money really in the bank to boost or really put on top of the head of Zorko to go to anyone of note, but we'll just have to wait and see how things fall here. Of course, we have the one trade. It is the sort of break glass in case of emergency type trade, where if we have a longer term injury, suspension, we will use it, but knock on wood, we don't have to. But it is, of course, as I said, the first week of the 4 weeks of finals for SuperCoach coming up in round 21. So Lockie Whitfield, 110, back to scoring an okay-ish, a low ton, because we know what he's capable of, 120 plus scores, 130 plus scores quite easily. And it's been a little bit of a frustrating own. Of course, since he got that concussion, held him out for a couple of weeks or a week, and was not fruitful at all. But since returning from concussion, 105, 104, and 110. So just hoping for a bit of a turnaround. He has the Bulldogs this coming round, but then also North Melbourne, Gold Coast, and St Kilda. So hopefully he can put in a nice end to the season. Callum Mills, as I've spoken about, every second week he's been going well. Did he break the trend? He did. So he scored a 125 against the Giants, and for a little moment there, he was going 121, 56, 107, 55, 115, and then up against the Giants, I was very, very, very worried, but came out and scored quite well. Faces Essendon this coming week, so could continue his nice run of form, and hopefully he does just that. On the bench, Angus Clark, 41. Again, just a depth, bench cover if need be. Sardal Hawley, he made his return to Essendon's team just purely off the back of the amount of injuries they've got, I think. Scored a 54. Defender mid, just provides that link with the defender mid DPP players. But, yeah, he scored 54. To the midfielders and LeBont, 169. As I said, if it wasn't for the AFL fucking things up, I would have put the VC on Bont and then put the C likely on Grundy. But, of course, I would have happily locked in that 169. So very, very frustrating. I don't know why the AFL are doing it, but they're really, really trying their best to ruin the sport that we love. It really is perplexing. But LeBon is some really nice form in recent weeks. 133, 174, 126, and a 169. So, yeah, he is completely on fire. Nicky Dacos, as I said, 177. Another player as well who is really, really making the most of their good form at the moment. So really love the look of Nicky D. Anyway, Zach Butters, 124. Another really nice week from him. Super consistent. Like the man is virtually one of the more consistent, if not the consistent, super coach at the moment, outside of Grundy, of course. But 124, dipped below his ton for the second time this season last week against Hawthorn, but a nice return to form in that showdown against the Crows. Maxi Home, again, another player who returned to form quite nicely. Really, really good to see. 130 and has scored a ton in every single game, bar one, from round 11 till now. So, yep, really, really looking nice and consistent. Connor Rosie, bit of a trying game for him. Conditions weren't perfect, of course. 94, was expecting much more than that, at least a 110, 115 after his return from that broken hand, I think it was. But, we'll take it. We'll take it. Caleb Strong, 105, virtually par for the course for him, much like Chad Warner, 106. Adam Chera, 84, and he's fallen away, as I said last week, massively. A very, very disappointing sort of end to the season for Adam Chera. I mean, Carlton aren't in the best form either, but, he was turning up on a run of games there and really has fallen away, but we have to keep him. We have to stay the course, as they say, for Adam Chera. On the bench, Clay Hall. I've spoken about this guy over the past couple of weeks. He has been a revelation since being gifted, or, I guess not gifted, but, owed the full game time after being a perennial sub at West Coast. Another 81 score, so he's ticking boxes there, and if need be, which he provided cover for me last week when Rosie was out with a broken hand, and scored another nice little 81, and he scored actually 80s over his past three games, 85, 84, 81. So a really, really, really valuable play here, which could be a handy, as I said, inclusion if someone was to miss a week or two due to injury or suspension. Zach Johnson, 41, just extra covered if need be. Hugh Boxall, I think he was the sub, scored a 54. For the Rucks, Brody Grundy, 137. As I said, VC locked that in. Harry Boyd was my captaincy loophole. Maxi Gawn as well. Liked him as an option. Scored a 146. So another extra 9 points on top of what Grundy scored. But, just happy that we've got Maxi Gawn. And it's kind of been a nice trade thus far because I traded Wacko Jacko Jackson to Brody Grundy and I went Cherry to Gawn. So a couple of nice trades there and keeping me in good stead, that's for sure. For the forwards, Baz Lenker, speaking of our return to form, 156. A really big game from him, but that's to be expected given the quality of opposition they were playing. Jack McRae, 101. Isaac Rankin, 59. A really disappointing game from him. I don't know what happened there. Really, I do not know what happened. I just thought would have been up and about against the arch rival in Port Adelaide. And 59, I think, is his lowest score for the season. Yes, it is. Lowest score for the season. So pretty putrid by him. Track, 108. Just struggles to really score into the 110s and above. But, it's kind of what we come to expect with him. He's only tonned up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times now across the course of the season. Faces West Coast this coming round, though. Will Melbourne respond after their capitulation against the Saints in the last quarter? You'd like to hope so, and hope that Track comes out firing as well with a nice score. Sam Darcy, he's been owing us for a fair while. Came out and scored a 150, and much, much needed, because since we brought him in round 15 against Richmond when he scored that 144, he's since scored 73, 73, 79, and 86. So the 150, he's more than made up for his recent sort of down patch. But yeah, a really, really big game from him, and to be expected as well against an injury-depleted Essendon. Caleb Daniel rounding things out on field for the forwards. Scored a 66, which I think was his lowest for the season. So a very, very strange round in terms of a whole host of players that really went above and beyond their projection. Bont, 169, Dacos, 177, Grundy, 137, Gorm, 146, Sinclair, 132, and then, Baz Lenker as well, 156. And then you have guys like Caleb Daniel with a lower score for the season. Rosie, a down game. Cherry, a down game. Rankin, a whole host of players that kind of tried to balance things in terms of these big scores being balanced alongside these really low scores. So a bit of a frustrating round, you probably call it, in terms of, my own personal week with some of these scores. But, we can't be having, we can ideally, but it would be nice to have every single player scoring 120 plus, but it's just not possible, as we know. And then in the flex as well, Tom McCarthy, 96. Nice return to a decent score there after previous scores of 82, 87, and 71 after his first two opening games of 133 and 101. So thank you, Tom McCarthy, for that. And part of the reason why I'm happy enough to have him in the flex. And then, of course, on the bench in the forward line, Campbell Gray from the Tigs and Cooper Simpson from Freo, both out injured at the moment. So that's the way things stand. We have 27.4K left in the bank, and of course that one trade remaining. So we will be clutching onto that ever so tightly. And with that, let's just go on to our captains and vice captains quickly. So because we won't be making a trade, we'll be holding on to that. Let's, of course, now, as we said last week, we need to be utilizing our VC and C loopholes as best we can, because that's the way we make up ground in the ranks, and of course against our head-to-head league opponents as well. The finals, anything can happen, as we know, so we really, really have to differentiate things as well. So I always talk about the VC and the C when it comes to, league finals, differentiating things if need be, of course. Now, if you are up against an opponent with a far superior side to you, the one hope that you do have in making up points, the differential that you think would be lacking in points, is by going with a bit of a pod VC. So that might sort of, switch things up, or even doing a bit of a pod C, of course, which is more the gamble because you don't get that, second chance compared to if you put the VC on a pod. But, that's something that you need to keep in mind as well. Look at who your opponent is VCing and seeing. If they have the same VC as you and your VC scores, relatively okay, but you need to take a bit of a gamble. As you can see with my team, I could have done just that on the weekend. I could have opted not to lock in Grundy's 137 and gone with a bit of a Hail Mary, a calculated Hail Mary at that, with the C on Nicky Dacos, and that would have netted me an extra 40 points. So that's just an example there, so just keep that in mind. Now, in terms of captains and VCs this week, of course, this is the first time I'm looking at the fixture for round 21, and we will, of course, go through the captains and VC options in greater detail in our weekly episode this coming week. But so look out for that, of course, in I'm the Captain Now in our SuperCoach Edge episode this week. But at first glance, just looking at the games, there's, of course, Melbourne up against West Coast. So I'd think that Gawn against Flynn, who is, I still think, conceding the most points to opposition rucks, is probably one I'd be looking very closely at. Plays actually the third game, and we could put the VC on him. However, we also have Bontempelli playing in the first game of the round on Thursday night against the Giants. Do they try and play Bedford on him? I don't know. I don't think they've been tagging in recent games. And his recent games against the Giants have netted 128, 116, 93. Now, I think when we're talking about, strategies and everything else for your head-to-head league finals, I would wager a lot of people would put the VC on Bontempelli. Now, if you want to sort of counter the risk, put the VC on him, as your opponent most likely will, you can kind of, navigate or mitigate the risk there, because if he goes large, you lock it in. If not, if he sort of goes below his projection, if he gets tagged, whatever, has a bit of a down outing, you can get a bit of a double dip on your opponent by putting the VC on another player, much like, Gawn in my side up against Flynn. And if there's another player that you really fancy, there is Grundy potentially against Essendon. Now, Essendon will most likely have Goldstein in the ruck again, and we all know Grundy's incredible form. So I think he probably speaks for itself. He would be my C option, I think. So I might be doing that with the C. I don't think there's anyone else. St Kilda up against North Melbourne, you could go for Sinclair. Wanganeen Miller, of course, who kicked the other two match-winning goals late in the piece for St Kilda against Melbourne. Outside of that, there isn't really anyone that jumps off the page. Anderson, if you have him, Rail against Richmond. Dacos plays Brisbane. Port play Geelong. So there's a few other guys you could look at in terms of form-wise. Dacos is in incredible form. Past 2 games, 169, 177. Does Brisbane put a bit of time and effort into, nullifying him? I think they probably will. So I'm a little bit worried about that. But yeah, I think the one standouts for me, in my team anyway, are probably Grundy, Maxi Gawn, the 2 rucks, the old Gaundy combo, as well as Bont playing first up. And those are probably the mix of guys that I'd be looking at. May look elsewhere once I do, crunch the numbers and look at matchups a bit more closely in terms of, exploiting really good matchups. But outside of that, I think that's what we would be looking at. Now, let's round things out before we end this chat with having a look at those who qualified for our 2 SuperCoach Edge cash leagues. Now, we have, of course, in Cash League 1, Sloppy Joe laying pipe. He has finished first. Of course, that is Jonas Goat, for those of you who do know Jonas in the live chat, in not just our SuperCoach podcast, but a whole host out there as well. He supports a lot of us content creators out there, so thank you, Jonas. And he has finished first in this league. We have in second place still Dream of Heaney. Now, I think that is, I don't really like cheese, good old Cheesy. And we have in third place as well, who's facing off against Cheesy, Moves Like Jagger, Josh's team, and Sloppy Joe Lay and Pipe. Jonas, he's playing Bluesman, who finished fourth. So all 4 of those teams, of course, have a double chance. Now, those that need to win in order to progress through and continue their assault in the pursuit of the top prize that is $1,000 in this league, it is Slims, who finished in 5th, Tankers in 8th, of course, the old combined father-in-law of Liam and I. So he scraped into 8th, so good work by you there, good old Pistol Pete. And in 6th spot, we have Adam, of course, our number 1 ticket holder. Good stuff there, Ads, facing off against Export, who finished in 7th. So best of luck to those of you who have qualified for the finals. And I'm just having a quick look at, so the unlucky teams in terms of those that missed out narrowly was LDU for Brownlow, Tim's team, who finished in 9th spot behind Pistol Pete, purely based on points scored. But mind you, he scored over 1,064 points less than Pistol Pete. So, yeah, of course, it is. We don't go by percentages here in this league. It is by points scored overall, because percentages kind of skew things, because it does factor in, those, teams that absolutely pummel you from week to week when you just have some bad luck, as I have in my own Cash League. But that rounds out Cash League 1. Cash League 2, we have Adam. So look at the difference here. So Adam, the number 1 ticket holder in this league, of course, such is the nicety of the man himself. He is in both of these leagues here and has double the chance for himself to make and win $1,000 in this league as well as the other one. So he finished in top spot, and he finished in top spot by a game clear. So well done to you, Ads. And you are facing off against Is Don Is Good 76, who finished in 4th spot. In 2nd spot, we have Zorakilla. I still don't know how to pronounce it. Thank you, Ryan, for always bamboozling me when I say your team name. But you finished in 2nd spot, and now you face off against Small Victories Matthews' side. And I think that's Emper, of course, one of our long-time supporters as well. He finished in 3rd spot. And rounding us out, of course, as I said, in 4th spot is Don Is Good 76. Now, they get the double chance, of course. Nards FC finished in 5th. He faces off against Black Flag in 8th spot. 6th spot, we have Lazy Sunday, and he faces off against Sausage Roll. So let's have a look at the hard luck stories in this league. And again, all of these teams that finished from 1st to 8th qualified outright. So John, with his team Black Flag in 8th spot, he finished a game ahead, or half a game ahead rather, of Unique Individuals, who finished in 9th spot. So really sort of loggerheads between 5th spot and 8th spot, only separated on points scored overall. And then, of course, Is Don Is Good was a game ahead of them in 4th, and equal on win-loss ratios on 13 wins. Zorakilla, however you pronounce it, and Small Victories, both on 13 wins, but separated by points scored. And Adam. Now, Adam has been quite fortunate, I must say, because his points scored overall if we filter it by that, has him in 4th spot, but don't tell him otherwise because, of course, he'll be tuning into this and he'll be snubbing his nose and laughing at me because, hey, I didn't even make it, but I finished in 9th spot on points scored overall, but he finished on in 4th spot on points scored overall. But hey, you've got to be in it to win it. And those of you, again, who qualified for finals in this cash league, all the very best to you as well. And again, $1,000 up for grabs in this league, $1,000 up for grabs in our other cash league. So best of luck to all of you out there. There is a big bounty on the line, obviously. So I will be riding you home and watching you with interest. So from here on out, we will be chatting about these cash leagues as well, just to build up the interest. And of course, you know, it is a big stakes on the line. So again, it's going to be a very hotly contested league, both of these. So that rounds things out, ladies and gents. That will end things for this Team Talk episode. Of course, if you have any comments, questions, feel free to leave them down below. If you are watching us on YouTube, always happy to help. Hit us up, of course, on socials at DamoJ88 is my personal account, or you can hit us up at SuperCoach_Edge, and we will be happy to help there. And likewise as well, on YouTube, feel free. Give us a like, give us a sub if you're not already. Just helps out with YouTube, the algorithm, putting our content out there to the masses, to the wider SuperCoach community. So I really do appreciate that. And if you are tuning into the audio podcast side of things, you can give us a bit of a rating in terms of 5 stars, which is always great and always appreciated, of course. But if you have a bit of time up your sleeve, you can actually leave a review as well through, I think, Apple Podcasts and through Spotify. So again, you don't have to, but if you have liked and enjoyed our work across 2025, feel free to do so. And again, really do appreciate it. In a season that has been topsy-turvy for all of us, but also for myself in my personal stakes, of course, my personal life, been very busy, much like Liam, but it has been very stressful at times, which I've spoken about in the past. But hey, we've got there, we've got through it, and it's part of the reason why I love jumping on here and chatting about SuperCoach with all of you out there tuning in, because it's a nice little escape and brings me closer to all of you out there, the kind, you people of the SuperCoach Edge community. And Liam, of course, he is back from his trip around Japan. Hoping to get him on as well as we round the last month of the season. We'll see how he goes in terms of his work. Of course, he has a lot of work to catch up on, no doubt, having been gallivanting around Japan. But we will see how things go for the run home on our weekly podcast, of course. And you'll be done as well. Bit of a segue. Look out for our podcast. It will be dropping on, I think, Wednesday in all likelihood. But outside of that, really do appreciate all of your support as always. Hopefully you had an incredible round in what was a high-scoring round. And with that, we'll catch you in the next one to do it all again.